Welcome back after the long weekend. So we're going to do our last step of quadratics today, which is solving quadratics. And this is when we're actually going to get an answer. So x equals blank, x equals 1, whatever we want it to be. So for this, if we look, we're used to seeing x squared plus x minus 42, and that's it. So there's no equal sign, there's no equation, but this time now you're going to see an additional part, which is that equals 0. So for this, we have a couple different steps here. We want to turn the quadratic into factored form. So for this problem right here, we want to go from our standard form here to that factored form. And in order to go there, that's just the box and the x that we're going to be doing. So it's a large step. It's not just going from there to there. But we do need to factor it like we normally would. But once we have these factors, and we set them to 0, then we can actually solve. And I want you right now to think about two things that when you multiply them equal 0. So can you think of two things that when you multiply, they equal 0? For example, we could use something like 2 times 0 equals 0. We could say 0 times 5 equals 0. We could say 10 times 0 equals 0. And what do you know about it every time? So note that at least once out of every single time, we have 0 as one of our numbers. So once we get it to this factored form that equals 0, then we can say that either this first thing is equal to 0 or the second one is equal to 0. And once we get it to that point, then it's just solving for 0 on both sides, which is the easy part. So when we solve this, we want to first turn it into factored form, exactly what we've been doing last week, and then we set each part equal to 0. That's called our zero product property. That says that if two things multiply together to equal 0, then one of them has to be 0. So let's do a few examples here. So letter A, x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. I am going to skip around a little bit here, but let's start it off. So first thing we want to do is we want to factor it, which means we need to have our box and our x ready to go. So our x squared goes here, 9 goes there, 6x goes here, and we multiply those two things, 9x squared, to go on the top. Go ahead, pause the video, see if you can figure out the x and the rest of the problem from here. Alright, so what multiplies to get 9 adds to get 6. That would be 3x and 3x. So we have x and x that multiply to get x squared. X times what equals 3x? 3. X times what equals 3x? 3. So then this is going to become actually x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 0. All right, and once we have it in this factored form, then we can say either the first thing is equal to 0 or the second thing is equal to 0 and solve both of these. Subtract 3, we get x equals negative 3. In this case, both answers will be the same. That's not super common, but that is the case here. All right, like I said, we are going to skip around a little bit, so we're going to move down to x squared minus 9 equals 0, which is actually the next one on your paper. So once again, see if you can factor this one yourselves. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can factor it yourself. We're going to get x squared here, negative 9 here. Oh, but wait, what goes in the bottom of the x? I remember if we're missing something, we can cancel that and say this is actually x squared plus 0x minus 9 equals 0. So remember, if part of it's missing, then it just becomes 0. So then what multiplies to get negative 9 adds to get 0. a negative 3x, and a positive 3x. How do we multiply to get this? X times negative 3 equals negative 3x. X times 3 equals 3x. So then x squared minus 9 equals 0 becomes x plus 3, x minus 3 equals 0. Remember here we do our zero product property that says either the first thing equals 0 or the last thing equals 0. And then solve both of these. Here we get x equals 3. And here we get x equals negative 3. All right, and we have these last two here. Go ahead, pause the video, see if you can factor this one correctly, and then come back and you'll see the problem there. I will tell you this one does have a GCF to factor out, so see if you can do that first. I'm going to. If you don't know what the GCF is, that's fine. You will end up with the same answer. All right, so there is our X in box completely filled out. So then this becomes, we can't forget about that 3, but it's just the x squared plus x minus 12 that is becoming this new factored form. So x plus 4 and x minus 3 equals 0. Remember, our zero product property states that if two things are being multiplied that equals 0, then one of them has to be equal to 0. Well, it's the same thing if we have three things being multiplied, right? Now we've got this, this, and this being multiplied. So we need to say 3 equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. So coming back to the first thing, does 3 equal 0? No, obviously not. So we can cross that out. That can't be part of our answer. And if we solve this one, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides and get x equals negative 4. Here we'll add 3 to both sides and get x equals 3. When you are solving any type of equation, you see the highest exponent here is 2 squared x squared. That means we're going to get 2 answers. So it makes sense that we got a third answer that didn't actually work for us. Okay. If you did not factor out the 3, you should still get the same answers as negative 4 and 3 in your final answer. So if you did this problem as 3x squared plus 3x minus 36, you put the 3x squared here, you put the negative 36x here, you multiplied them. It does make the problem a lot more difficult, but you can still get the same answer, and you will still get the same answer. And the last one for today, x squared minus 5x equals 0. Once again, it's missing a part of it, so make sure that you add that part in. So we'll call this x squared minus 5x plus 0 equals 0. And then go ahead and solve that using the Xbox method. You can take a GCF out here if you want as well. Pause the video, come back, you'll see the work all for the Xbox. Actually, let's pause it, and you'll see the work for the entire problem done. All right, so here is the problem worked out. You can see the x in the box. You should get factors that are x plus 0, x minus 5. Break them apart, so x plus 0 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0, and you'll get x equals 0, and x equals positive 5. Notice here, if you did factor out the x right away, so x squared minus 5x equals 0, and you factored out that x, then actually there was nothing to factor, and you could have went straight from there using zero product property with those two things, right? X equals 0, and x minus 5 equals 0, which then would have been one step to get x equals 5. So if you do factor out something at the beginning, that's definitely helpful. Saves you a lot of time and a lot of work, but if you don't, as you can see, you'll still get the right answer.